references that I used for creating the lecture on survey methodology, questionnaire, and everything that I spoke in the last 30-40 minutes in the lecture. Now let me introduce you to a very new topic called task analysis. So now what are we trying to do? In the process of designing, we are actually moving forward with understanding the users. In understanding the users, there are multiple ways of doing it. We saw think aloud sessions, we saw interviews, we saw focus group discussions, we saw survey methodology, and in survey we saw multiple ways of collecting data. Now I'm going to actually contextual inquiry is another method that we saw. So now we're going to see a methodology called as task analysis. Task analysis is a systematic series of questions to help you find out who users are and what tasks they need to perform. So the basic idea for task analysis is that in the process of, again, going back to the remote for the slide changer or for the Uber, the task could be saying that, okay, you book a cab to go to the airport in Delhi, you book a cab, go to the airport in Chennai, or something like that. That's the kind of a task that you will give, and you will see how users are performing, right? So that's task analysis. One interesting thing that you'll have to do in task analysis, or one necessary thing that you'll have to do in task analysis is create scenarios. While creating scenarios, you have to keep in mind that the scenarios have to capture different actions that you will expect the users to do in your solution. So the methodology of task analysis lets the administrator to try new ideas, because again, in the Uber scenario, you could actually create the questions which can help you to understand how users are making the decision in different contexts, right? So you could actually say, okay, now book a cab to go to the airport, cancel the cab is not arriving in a few minutes, or you see that the cab is actually very far away, you delete or cancel the booking that you've done and then rebook for another one. So in the process of getting the users to do different types of tasks, you will also understand how users are making decisions so that you can actually build your solution accordingly. And one of the big reasons why you want to do task analysis early in the stage of actually building your solution is to get rid of problems early in the design process. So you can actually think of how users are making the decision and make decisions in your task analysis accordingly. So this method, the task analysis methodology, is actually a very complementary methodology to contextual inquiry. Because contextual inquiry, what did you do? You actually ended up seeing users doing a particular task in a given context, right? You did not give the task. You went and just observed users doing different activities in the given scenario, in the given situation where they are working. You ended up only observing the users doing their activities. So therefore, task analysis and contextual inquiry goes very complementary to each other. Here are some questions that you want to keep in mind while planning your task analysis. Who's going to use the system, right? For example, teenagers versus senior citizens, male versus female, urban area versus rural area. What tasks do they now perform, right? How do they do it now? For slide changer, when somebody was trying to build this, earlier the slides were changed only using the keyboard in the laptop or in the desktop, right? So what tasks do they perform now? That will help you to think of tasks that they would perform in the new solution that you're trying to build. What tasks are desired? How is the task that they're doing? Is it desirable state? What is that? How are tasks learned, right? Because for example, again for remote, I have to learn that what are these buttons? How do I do the activity? In the Uber app, I have to learn how to actually figure out to book a cab, to schedule a cab, right? So all of this is actually how the tasks are learned, how to use the app users are learning. That I think you want to capture. Where are the tasks performed, right? Booking a cab, this is in a classroom, in a lecture hall, Uber, standing in the street, trying to go back home, trying to go to the airport. What's the relationship between user and the data, right? So for example, what data are you trying to collect? What is the relationship? Meaning user is trying to perform. We'll also see later in the course, there are something called as primary data and secondary data that you can collect. Right? There is also, as already I mentioned, something like qualitative data and quantitative data. Similarly, there is also primary data and secondary data. What is the relationship between the user and the data? Meaning, I'm the user. What data can you collect from me by using this remote, and what data can you collect from me while doing the Uber app are actually very different. So the relationship between me and the data is actually very relevant. Here are some more questions that you want to keep in mind. What other tools does the user have, right? For example, in terms of remote, I could go to the laptop. In terms of Uber, I could actually use Ola, so for that matter. How do users communicate with each other, right? So if at all there is communication between users, how do they communicate? Meaning, how do I communicate with the driver in the Uber scenario? Meaning, I just make a call to them, right? In some situation, there is no calling. You could probably only text the user. You probably only can send a text message to the user or to the other party. How often are the tasks performed, right? Meaning, depending on frequency of the time, frequency of the number of times the tasks are performed, you could actually decide a design for the solution that you're coming up with, right? Some tasks that is being performed on and off, you want to make it very sturdy. Some tasks that are performed not very frequently, you could actually make a decision on design, which is depending on the frequency that they're using, right? Because if I'm not using it very frequently, you could make a decision of saying that you can keep it light, you can keep it not very sturdy, and around that. Whereas if it is frequently done, you want to actually make sure that it is very sturdy, and it is actually making sure that the lifetime of the design that you're making is actually longer. What are the time constraints on the task, right? I want to go to the airport, I just have 45 minutes, and it takes about 45 minutes. What is the time constraint that is there in that situation? What is the time constraint in sometimes remote, right? It can't be like I clicked and I have to wait for some time for the slides to change. What happens when things go wrong? If it doesn't work out, is there a way to actually fix it? What are the ways to fix it? Right? Keeping these questions in mind will help you actually develop a good task analysis. Good tasks, so to say, that you can go to users and collect data. You can do actually task analysis before or after you get data about users. That is, if you do it before, it can help think through the issues, but still need to validate your analysis. If you do it after, you can actually help organize your results. Now, let's look at more details about how to do this task analysis. Choose real tasks, right? That is, you don't have to choose hypothetical tasks of saying, okay, now let's look at going from point A to point B in Uber. While going in the direction, please change the location point B to point C, and let's see how the users reacted. Don't make it very hypothetical situations, but make it real situation that users generally face and users generally do at the maximum number of times in their usage of your tool. I have a mix of simple and complex tasks. I have some examples later to give you what is a simple task, what is a complex task. But easy tasks, common or introductory, which is create an account on Amazon.com, create an account on Flipkart, moderate task, order a book on Flipkart and get it delivered in my office. Difficult task are for probably order a book, book is arrived, you don't like it, return the book and buy another book from Flipkart. So make it in this way, which is easy, moderate, and difficult. Because what does this allow you to do? This allows you to actually figure out that how users behave in different sets of tasks that is given to them. Good task essentially to good usability, right? So if you create tasks that are very precise, tasks that are very specific to the context that you're studying, it will actually make the design also better, because you're going to get more useful data from the users, and therefore your design will be better. So the questions again to ask is, does the system support key desired task, which is some of the most frequently used tasks, is it supporting? How well does your system support these tasks? We'll see more of tasks in evaluation when we actually figure out what tasks to give and how to actually evaluate the system that you built. So use a combination of easy, medium and hard tasks and form a cohesive story, because story could be something like now you want to go to point A to point B, and create a scenario. Meaning some of the scenarios I'll tell you that I have made in the past is one of the scenarios is for a user study, we created a scenario like you are a person who's working in a company, you are the assistant to the CEO of the company, and you will get these kind of emails generally about appointments, about actually food that you have to order, about some packages that are arriving, and topics around it, and we'll actually see how you react to these emails. So that's the kind of scenario. If you create scenarios which are very plausible, so to say, and if you create tasks that are very specific and very contextual in that scenario, you will actually get a lot of very useful data. So easy task, create an account, find a product, add to the cart. Medium, checkout, change shipping address. Hard, refund an item and cancel a purchase. Right? Something such like so. So now with this, you would have an idea about what does task analysis mean. I'm assuming that with the contextual inquiry exercises that you would have done and with the task analysis that I'm talking about now, please do a task analysis for yourself of a project, of an idea that you want to do, and share what you're finding out in the mailing list or just to us also. I'll be happy to actually review whatever you're finding through your task analysis and giving you feedback on whether it is making sense or not. So now let me tell you actually interesting things, so to say, point in time, two studies that I will mention to you, which are the phenomenal studies or the studies that made how human subjects studies are done after these point in time. I don't know whether you've heard about it. There are two studies that I'm going to talk about. One is Stanford experiment and the other one is Milgram experiment. So here is a first experiment, which is Milgram experiment. It's called Milgram experiment, and it was done at Yale in 1961. The idea here was there was a person given, so administrator, there was a user, and then there is the employee on the other side, or the person who's actually working with you, which is on the other side of the wall. So here you can see there's a wall, there's an L, there's a T, and there's an E. So T and E are on the other side of the wall, and L is on this side of the wall. So L is what is the user who's getting the output of what T is doing. Right? So participants to obey the experimenter. Right? So T, experimenter E, is actually telling the participants to do some things, and the experimenter is giving instructions, and the participants have to follow the instructions according to what he is saying. Interestingly, what happened was the experimenter was telling the participants do some things, and in the process the participant ended up actually giving shock to people on the other side, even though there was not any human being on the other side. 65% of them went and gave 450 volts of electricity to the other side of the person. Right? So the point here is that user studies were done, and the users were told, experimenter told the users to do certain activity, and in the process the participant gave shock to people on the other side, which is the person on the other side of the wall, about 450 volts. This was an interesting experiment where users behaved even though they think that, or they thought that they were giving shock to the other person, they did not stop at some minimal value. They went to up to 450 volts. Here is another experiment. This experiment actually changed the way that human subjects are handled. Right? Stanford prison experiment. So the idea here is a twofold, which is the prisoner and the guard. 1971 was a study in Stanford, 24 undergraduates in the basement of a building, and the idea was half of them were made as prisoner, the half of them were made as guard for some time, and they saw that the prisoners and the guards had certain type of behavior when they were prisoners and guard, and they changed after some time. They changed the role, and they saw that the participants in the study had emotional disturbance, which is basically guards were beating the prisoners, and they were showing arrogance to the participants. Right? So what does these two experiments tell us? These two experiments, at least the Stanford experiment, definitely shows us that the data that you're collecting from users, if you put users into a certain scenario, they start behaving. Actually, both the studies shows that if you put users into a certain scenario, they start behaving as though they're part of that scenario itself. And the other one is, of course, human subjects data. When you collect, you should be very, very careful, right? So these experiments helped create the IRB that I discussed before, where you are actually getting approval for collecting user subjects data, and all the data that any data that you collect from users, it should be approved, right? So the reason was some of these experiments. With that, I'll stop this week's lecture, and hopefully you're kind of getting into the groove of studying users and understanding what users' needs are. And in the next week, what we'll see is keeping these user needs, what can you start building, right? What kind of designs that you can come up with, and how you want to use the things that you're getting out of this contextual inquiry, task analysis, all of this into building something that you can actually start prototyping and actually evaluating.